Hey there, welcome back to Epic Slumber. I'm really glad you're here tonight. If you're new, this is a cozy corner of YouTube where we wander through some of the world's most overlooked histories, told slowly with a touch of dry humor, so you can drift off without ever needing to worry about missing anything too exciting. Tonight we're traveling deep into West Africa, following the golden footsteps of Mansa Musa, the African king who once crossed deserts with 100 camels loaded down with gold. But don't worry, no matter how glittering it gets, this story is all gentle turns and soft landscapes, perfect for helping you fade out whenever your eyes decide it's time. If you enjoy these sleepy journeys, give this video a little like. It tells YouTube to keep sprinkling these calm stories into your nights. And let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is. I love seeing our little sleepy map of the world grow. All right, get comfortable, maybe tuck in a bit deeper, and let's wander back through the sands of Mali together. You drift quietly into the warm, drowsy air of the Sahara, a faint shimmer on the horizon tricking your eyes even before you've taken a full breath. The sand doesn't scorch you. This is a story, after all, but the sun still hangs low and fat, draping everything in melted gold. Tiny motes of dust float lazily around you, as if they've got nowhere better to be, much like you. Somewhere a camel grunts, unimpressed by your entrance into its kingdom. A cluster of palm trees leans together like old women gossiping at the market. You take a careful step and feel the dry crunch of grit beneath your sandals. By the way, a soft, cheeky warning. If you think you'll make it through this entire journey fully awake, you're probably more optimistic than most of medieval Europe's physicians. Before we wander too far, a gentle nudge. Like this video if you find yourself blinking slower than usual. It helps more than you'd think. And leave a comment telling me where in the world you're listening from and what time it is for you. I promise there's a peculiar comfort in knowing sleepy minds are scattered across every time zone. Now let's ease into tonight's journey, following the trails of one of the wealthiest men ever to walk this earth, Mansa Musa, the Emperor of Mali. Though, knowing your luck, he's likely just around the next dune. Your feet lead you into the heart of the 14th century, when Mali wasn't just a dusty speck on maps drawn by monks with questionable cartography skills. It was a colossal empire rich with gold, salt, and stories that still ripple through history. You hear the faint clang of metal, a trader counting coins, maybe, or a blacksmith polishing a promise. The major historical fact for tonight's opening act: during Mansa Musa's reign, around 1312 to 1337 C, Mali controlled roughly half of the world's gold supply. That's not exaggeration. That's uncomfortable truth for anyone who feels smug about their retirement savings. Off to your right, a cluster of merchants argue over the weight of tiny golden nuggets. One man insists he was cheated by a single grain, tiny enough to hide under a fingernail, yet still able to buy him a new donkey. Weird cultural tidbit. People in Musa's empire actually dusted themselves with powdered gold on special occasions. Imagine prepping for your cousin's wedding by literally sprinkling your face with money. Historians still debate whether Mansa Musa himself ever truly grasped just how vast his empire's wealth was, or if he thought of it more like you might think of loose change under your couch cushions. A warm breeze sighs over your shoulder, carrying the faint scent of roasted dates. Your eyelids are already heavier than they should be, and we've barely begun. You wander on, past thorny shrubs that look like they're scheming your demise, and eventually arrive at a bustling city gate, Timbuktu. Yes, the very same Timbuktu you might have jokingly threatened to run away to as a kid. Only here, it's no joke. The air is thick with voices, Arabic, Manding, Tuareg, braiding together like a lullaby with too many choruses. A camel caravan shuffles past you, hooves stirring little spirals of dust. Each beast looks mildly annoyed to be alive. Balanced atop their humps, heavy chests studded with iron, stuffed full of coins. This is only a tiny fragment of Mansa Musa's traveling fortune. Remember the powdery gold from earlier? Well, it's practically raining money now. One major historical fact before you get lost in all that glitter. On his famous pilgrimage to Mecca in 1324, Mansa Musa traveled with a caravan reportedly stretching as far as the eye could see. Some say 60,000 people, 12,000 slaves, and those infamous 100 camels, each bearing hundreds of pounds of gold. That's basically the medieval version of someone showing up to your local grocery store with 100 armored trucks. An old man selling dyed leather slippers calls out to you. He's missing 2 teeth, but makes up for it with a wink that says he knows at least 3 secrets about your future. A boy nearby giggles as he chases a chicken wearing a scrap of indigo cloth like a tiny royal cape. Obscure cultural tidbit: in Mali's imperial courts, guests were sometimes sprinkled with rose water and then dusted with perfumed talc before they could approach the king. Try picturing your local mayor doing that at town hall meetings. As for our scholarly uncertainty, there are endless arguments over just how much gold Musa gave away on this trip. Some scholars think he nearly wrecked economies across North Africa and the Middle East by devaluing local currencies. Others roll their eyes and say, sure, it was dramatic, but maybe not quite apocalypse on a ledger. You lean against a sun-warmed wall, taking it all in. Somewhere a musician plucks a chorus string, the notes curling around you like drowsy snakes. Remember that street with the gossiping palm trees? You'd swear it somehow looped back around, following you like a curious stray cat. Your shoulders slacken, breath evens. Still plenty of dust on your journey ahead, but don't worry, we'll keep wandering together. You find yourself drifting deeper into the maze of Timbuktu's sun-bleached streets, where every narrow alley seems to lead you into a little pocket of surprise. Someone's frying dough sweetened with honey, and the scent curls around your head like a soft scarf. Nearby, a pair of scholars in loose white robes argue politely, gesturing with ink-stained fingers over the precise phrasing in a Quranic verse. You catch only fragments, but it sounds suspiciously like 2 professors bickering over whose footnote matters more. That's because Timbuktu wasn't just a dusty stop on a gold highway. It was one of the intellectual powerhouses of the medieval world. Major historical fact: by the early 14th century, Timbuktu's Sankore University had amassed a library of manuscripts that rivaled any in Europe. Mathematics, astronomy, law. If you could read Arabic script, the world's secrets were stacked high on wooden shelves waiting for you. A small boy runs past, laughing, carrying a goat under one arm like it's an unruly sibling. You smile, and yes, your feet keep following these little human breadcrumbs. Because even in this golden empire, life had its quirky flavors. Obscure cultural tidbit? Students at Sankor sometimes wrote notes on thin wooden tablets they carried everywhere, which they sanded smooth and reused. It's like the medieval version of a dry erase board, except if you forgot to clean it, the imam might give you side-eye for weeks. You pause under an archway carved with floral patterns, cool shadow wrapping around you. Historians still debate whether Timbuktu's reputation as an impossibly remote city was a European exaggeration. Some say it was more accessible and cosmopolitan than later maps dared admit. Less of a far-off fable, more of a well-connected hub where caravans traded stories as often as spices. Somewhere close, a donkey brays indignantly, like it's just heard your private thoughts. You chuckle under your breath. The street you walked past earlier, the one with all those leather slippers, is right behind you again. It's almost as if Timbuktu itself is playfully nudging you, saying, "Keep going, sleepy traveler." The day lengthens, and you drift eastward along a road lined with merchants lounging under faded awnings. Bolts of cloth ripple like captured rainbows. A pair of girls chase each other around a stack of pottery, giggling until one nearly trips, sending a row of bowls into nervous wobbles. You wince, half expecting a crash, but somehow everything settles with a sigh. As the noise fades, your attention catches on a low chant, a group of travelers at prayer, lined shoulder to shoulder on small woven mats. Their soft voices rise and fall like gentle waves, a sound that soothes even if you can't catch a single word. And here's tonight's major historical fact to tuck under your pillow. When Mansa Musa reached Cairo on his way to Mecca, the influx of gold he spent on alms, gifts, and lavish purchases reportedly caused a decade-long inflation crisis. Prices soared, currencies twisted under the weight of his generosity, and merchants across Egypt were still complaining years later. Imagine walking into a grocery store and realizing last month's bread now costs triple, thanks to a very rich tourist. Obscure cultural tidbit? Many West African travelers carried small pouches of cola nuts, both to chew for energy and to present as polite offerings. It was like pulling out a fancy bottle of wine, except instead of swirling it in a glass, you crack a nut with your teeth and try not to look too hyper. Historians still debate whether Mansa Musa intended to showcase Mali's overwhelming wealth as a form of soft diplomacy, or whether he was just following the cultural expectations of Islamic charity on pilgrimage, blissfully unaware of how hard local economies would reel. Either way, you suspect merchants scrambled to invent surge pricing centuries before Uber did. A hen struts past, scandalized by your grin, and disappears behind a basket of dates. The breeze picks up, carrying a trace of saffron and sweat, and your eyelids feel heavier. Remember that musician plucking the kora? His notes chase you here too, wrapping around your heart like a lullaby that doesn't quite want to let go. You follow a curve in the road and find yourself suddenly surrounded by Caravan's makeshift camp. Tents of russet and ochre sprout from the sand like oversized mushrooms after rain. Camels rest on folded legs, eyes half shut, wearing expressions that seem to judge your entire existence. A boy walks among them, humming to himself, tapping each beast's flank with a slender reed, like he's conducting a sleepy orchestra. Your steps slow, pulled into the warm lull of afternoon. Somewhere close, a pot bubbles over a low fire sending up rich, spicy steam that tickles your nose and says, "You really didn't eat enough today, did you?" A major historical fact drifts through your head like the scent of cardamom. Mansa Musa's Hajj, this staggering pilgrimage to Mecca, solidified Mali's global reputation. Chronicles from Cairo to Venice began to scribble frantic notes about this golden king from Africa. He didn't just drop gold. He dropped Mali onto the world's diplomatic map, which had previously given sub-Saharan empires little more than a lazy doodle. Nearby, a merchant proudly shows off strips of indigo-dyed cloth that left his own palms permanently blue. Obscure cultural tidbit: in Mali, indigo dyeing was such a specialized craft that dyers often belonged to hereditary castes, living in neighborhoods thick with vats and secrecy. If you spilled a family recipe, you might as well have handed over your entire fortune. Historians still debate whether the vast numbers of Musa's caravan were partly exaggerated by Arab scribes dazzled by spectacle, or if we really should imagine tens of thousands stretching across the horizon. A moving city of people, camels, goats, musicians, cooks, scribes, guards, and the occasional nosy dog. Either way, you suspect the dust cloud alone could have been seen from Mars. You wander past a tent where a storyteller sits cross-legged, voice low and smoky as he recounts ancient epics. His hands dance to punctuate heroic deeds and foolish mistakes. And though you can't follow every word, something about the cadence presses pleasantly against your temples. The sun begins to slip, smearing a pink hush across the sky. A few camels groan, perhaps in agreement that it's finally time to stop fussing and simply exist. Night settles in with the gentle insistence of a familiar blanket. Someone lights a lantern inside a tent, the glow turning its fabric walls into a glowing peach cocoon. Nearby, a small chorus of crickets begins a concert, so enthusiastic you half expect them to pass a hat for coins. You sink onto a worn rug, elbows on your knees, letting the sounds of camp life blur together. Laughter, the rhythmic slap of bread dough, the low whine of a wind teasing every canvas flap. It's the kind of atmosphere where you could close your eyes and lose 10 minutes or 10 years. Here's a major historical fact to mull over while your thoughts drift. Long before Mansa Musa, the Mali Empire was shaped by powerful predecessors like the Ghana Empire, which controlled trans-Saharan trade from roughly the 6th to 13th centuries. Musa inherited not an empty sandbox, but a legacy of trade networks and tribute systems that have been running like careful clockwork for generations. A small child tiptoes past, balancing a wooden tray of steaming mint tea. He catches your eye, grins with all the confidence of someone who knows 3 whole adult secrets, and darts away. Obscure cultural tidbit: in medieval West Africa, tea wasn't yet the daily ritual it would become under later Islamic influence. Instead, people favored thick millet beer and fermented drinks sweetened with honey, because sometimes hydration needs a little adventure. Historians still debate how thoroughly Islam reached every corner of Mali's countryside during Musa's reign. Royal courts and major cities built grand mosques. Yes, but village rituals often blended older animist practices with new Islamic customs, creating a lively tapestry of belief. So much for uniform sermons. Someone nearby begins plucking a 3-string goni, the melody spiraling upward like lazy smoke. You remember the rosewater and gold dust from earlier. The scent of sweat and roasted lamb here is its earthier cousin, reminding you that luxury never travels alone. It always needs hungry mouths, clever hands, and 1,000 small labors to keep its golden mask in place. You lean back on your palms. Above you, the sky blooms with so many stars, you suspect they're showing off just for you. By morning, the camp unravels itself like a lazy cat stretching. Tents collapse under practiced hands, ropes coil into neat bundles, and the fires sputter out with gentle hisses. You walk through it all, feeling oddly privileged to be part of this caravan's sleepy rebirth. A young man passes you, balancing 3 clay jugs on his shoulders with the ease of someone who's never known a chiropractor. He hums a tune that skips lightly from note to note, and for a brief moment you imagine the entire caravan as a living creature, breathing, sighing, rearranging its bones before moving on. Today's major historical fact dances into view. By the time Mansa Musa returned to Mali from Mecca, he didn't just carry stories and souvenirs. He brought architects and scholars with him. People like Abu Ishaq Saheli, an Andalusian poet and architect who helped redesign cities like Gao and Timbuktu with striking new mosques and palaces. Mali's skyline was forever changed by what Musa saw on his pilgrimage. Nearby, a small knot of traders argues over whose camel is more trustworthy. Obscure cultural tidbit? In many Sahelian communities, people once decorated their camels' tails with colored wool tassels. Not for any practical reason, but simply because even beasts of burden deserved a touch of style. Historians still debate whether Musa's grand building projects were meant purely for religious devotion or if they also served as clever public relations. Shimmering symbols of Mali's power meant to impress both locals and foreign visitors. You suspect it was probably a bit of both, with a dash of personal bragging rights thrown in. You find yourself back alongside the kora player from Timbuktu, his instrument now scarred by fresh scratches from sand and travel. As he plucks out a tender tune, 2 children spin in slow circles nearby, their feet kicking up tiny sunbursts of dust. You almost want to join them. Almost. The sun lifts higher. The caravan slowly unwinds into a ribbon across the dunes, and you can't help thinking this might be the world's most spectacular traffic jam, just missing a few honking goats. By afternoon, the land flattens into an endless hush, broken only by distant shapes of trees that look like they're gossiping in little cliques. The sky presses down, heavy and blue, making you feel like a small, bright pebble on an enormous painter's canvas. Your feet crunch over a scatter of pale bones. Camel, goat, maybe the odd, ill-fated chicken, sun-bleached relics of journeys that didn't end with story songs. But don't worry. Your caravan trudges on with the calm confidence of people who survived worse. Major historical fact to tuck away with your yawn. The Mali Empire under Musa didn't just grow through wealth alone. It was built on complex systems of tribute, military campaigns, and diplomatic marriages. Local chiefs sent annual taxes in gold dust, livestock, or slaves, keeping Musa's court swimming in luxuries most European monarchs could only dream about. A small group of travelers sets up a makeshift rest spot, unfolding rugs and tossing down saddlebags. One man pulls out a tiny flute car from ivory and plays a high, looping tune that seems to tug at the corners of your mind. Obscure cultural tidbit? In many West African traditions, music wasn't mere entertainment. It was seen as a conduit for history itself, with griots, oral historians, entrusted to keep centuries of genealogies and battles alive through song. Historians still debate just how centralized Musa's control really was. Was he an iron-fisted ruler managing every corner of his empire, or more of a lavish figurehead, with regional governors exercising practical power on the ground? The chronicles, much like your drifting thoughts, don't settle neatly. A breeze kicks up, swirling sand around your ankles in delicate pirouettes. You catch sight of a small cluster of thorn trees and realize you've looped back to a familiar spot. Remember the boy carrying the goat like a naughty sibling? A different boy stands there now, balancing a basket of dates on his head. Different face, same mischievous grin. You smile despite yourself. Some patterns never tire of repeating. As evening slides its cool hands across the dunes, the caravan makes camp once more. You wander through clusters of low fires and half-built tents, the flames crackling with quiet confidence, as though they know just how many stories they'll overhear tonight. A woman ladles out a rich stew into small wooden bowls, her arm moving with hypnotic rhythm. You catch the tang of garlic and something smoky, and your stomach rumbles like a traitor. Here's tonight's major historical fact to swirl gently in your mind. By the later 14th century, long after Musa's famous pilgrimage, European mapmakers began sketching Mali onto their world charts with sudden enthusiasm. The Catalan Atlas of 1375 even featured a bejeweled king of Mali holding up a gold nugget bigger than his own head. Subtle? Absolutely not. But it cemented West Africa in the European imagination as a land of near-mythic wealth. Just beyond a small circle of lanterns, a man demonstrates an odd little dance. Tiny steps forward and back, punctuated by claps. A child joins him, giggling through every mistake. Obscure cultural tidbit? Among Mandinka musicians, learning to play the balafon, an ancestor of the xylophone, was often wrapped in spiritual rituals, with students undergoing symbolic initiation to prove they were worthy of carrying melodies that shaped village memory. Historians still debate whether Mansa Musa's own subjects fully grasped the scale of their king's international celebrity. Did farmers in distant fields know that somewhere across the sea, monks were painting their ruler in gold leaf? Or did they just worry about the next rain and whether the termites would get into the millet bins again? The wind shifts, sending a swirl of ash dancing over your feet. Somewhere nearby, two old men argue about whether a trader cheated them on salt blocks last year. Their voices fade into a shared laugh, proving some quarrels exist more for entertainment than anger. You tuck your knees up, resting your chin on them. Above you, the sky winks alive with stars, more than any court jeweler could count, even if he tried with every scrap of gold Mansa Musa ever dropped. By dawn, the fires have burned to shy orange embers. You rise and stretch, feeling oddly protective of this temporary city that keeps blooming and dissolving around you. A line of camels is already gathering, snorting little clouds into the cool air, their handlers coaxing them along with soft clicks and private curses. Today's major historical fact drifts through your sleepy mind. When Mansa Musa finally returned to Mali, he didn't simply settle back into old habits. Instead, he poured immense resources into building mosques and madrasas, especially in Timbuktu, which became one of the greatest centers of Islamic learning in the world. Scholars flocked there from Cairo, Fez, and even far-off Baghdad, all eager to copy manuscripts and teach bright-eyed students. You watch a woman knotting her scarf tightly around her hair. Obscure cultural tidbit? In many Sahelian communities, the patterns dyed into fabrics weren't just decoration. They were subtle signals of clan identity or marital status. A stranger could glance at your wrapper and learn more gossip than your neighbor might admit in a month. Historians still debate whether the gold Musa spent across North Africa truly caused the region's economy to spiral for decades, or if that story was burnished by later European writers eager to spin a cautionary fable about African extravagance. Either way, it stuck. A bit like that date syrup you dribbled on your sleeve last night. You wander past a small group of men breaking their fast on flatbread and goat cheese. One of them notices your gaze and breaks off a piece, offering it with a friendly grin. You accept, chewing slowly as the salt pricks your tongue. Remember that old ivory flute? Its notes drift through the morning again, like a reminder that even in vast empires, life is ultimately a handful of small, shared kindnesses. A camel bell jingles, a soft metal laugh. You smile back at it because why not humor the absurd? The caravan rolls on across low ridges and sandy flats, the horizon a patient, unwavering promise. You drift beside it, your sandals catching on tiny stones that seem determined to prove their presence. Every so often, a gust sweeps through, snatching up bits of grit and sending them skittering like tiny dancers across the sun-hardened earth. Major historical fact for your dreamy mental scrapbook. Even centuries after Mansa Musa's reign, Mali's reputation endured. Portuguese explorers in the 15th century scoured West Africa's coast partly in hopes of tracing whispers of this golden empire inland. They arrived with ships, crosses, and cannons, eager to poke at old legends with the subtlety of a goat in a pottery shop. A cluster of women sits beneath a rough canopy ahead, weaving baskets with swift, clever fingers. Obscure cultural tidbit? In many Mande societies, elaborate basket patterns weren't just for markets. They were essential dowry items, each design carrying symbolic blessings for fertility, harmony, or stubborn good luck. Try tucking that into your next wedding registry. Historians still debate exactly how many manuscripts filled Timbuktu's libraries at their height. Was it tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands? Did some slip quietly away into private homes, hidden in clay jars and family trunks to survive centuries of conquest and colonial plundering? You suspect those scrolls are still out there, waiting to be dusted off by hands that remember. A donkey brays, startling you from your reverie, its ears flopping like flags. You give it a respectful nod. Donkeys in this story seem to know more than they let on. Remember that goat cheese flatbread from earlier? You catch the same tang on the breeze now, mingled with smoke and the faint promise of roasted nuts. A few children dart past, chasing each other with shouts that lift like birds. One of them nearly barrels into a camel, who swings its head to glare, then resumes chewing, profoundly unimpressed. You let out a breath that feels like a small surrender to the slow, rolling time of this endless road. By mid-afternoon, the sun has settled into that overconfident stage where it dares you to keep walking without complaint. You shade your eyes, spotting a low line of walls ahead. Another village cradled by the trade routes, where people sell fresh water, dates, and stories for the price of a pause. Your feet guide you through narrow lanes strung with drying herbs. Somewhere overhead, a strip of indigo cloth flaps lazily in the heat. A small boy sits cross-legged on a step, carving geometric patterns into a scrap of wood, his tongue caught between his teeth in absolute concentration. Major historical fact for this dusty stop: Mali's trade wasn't limited to gold. The empire's caravans also moved salt, cola nuts, ivory, and even books. A merchant with a good line on scholarly texts could make nearly as much profit as one hauling gold nuggets, provided he avoided the bandits who found intellectual cargo a bit hard upon. Obscure cultural tidbit: among some Fulani herders, elaborate hair braiding served not just aesthetic but practical purposes. Certain styles protected scalps from the harsh sun during long migrations, while also announcing the wearer's family ties. So next time you fret over a bad hair day, remember, someone once used theirs as both sunscreen and family newsletter. Historians still debate whether Musa's construction spree after returning from Mecca was truly a burst of piety or more of a shrewd maneuver to consolidate loyalty among local elites by building them grand mosques to anchor their towns. It's the medieval equivalent of gifting someone a fancy community center. Hard to refuse, harder to ignore. You pass a low table where three elders sit sipping a sour drink from shared cups. One glances at you, squints, then returns to his story without missing a beat. No doubt something about ancestors who once bargained so cleverly they outwitted spirits. The wind carries his laughter to you anyway. And just behind that laughter, a faint strain of music, the ivory flute again, trailing your steps like a shy friend who refuses to admit they've grown fond of you. Evening sidles in on long, dusky legs, painting the world in soft bruises of purple and gold. The caravan has stopped once more, pitching tents in haphazard clusters that seem to sprout wherever the ground decides to be slightly less hostile. You wander among them, savoring the swirl of voices, the pop of small fires, the gentle clink of cooking pots finding their partners. Tonight's major historical fact drifts to you like a stray ember. By the time European sailors started pushing down Africa's coastlines in the 15th and 16th centuries, they found trade networks already so ancient and sophisticated that local merchants viewed them with mild curiosity, like someone watching a toddler try to tie a necktie. Mali's routes to North Africa and the Mediterranean had been humming with business long before the first Portuguese caravel bobbed awkwardly offshore. A young girl skips past, her ankles adorned with tiny bells that tinkle at every playful leap. Obscure cultural tidbit: some West African communities believe the jingling of bells could ward off mischievous spirits, so jewelry often doubled as a low-budget security system. Try explaining that to your local insurance agent. Historians still debate exactly how Mansa Musa's pilgrimage altered Mali internally. Did his display of wealth strengthen ties with neighboring states through sheer awe? Or did it sow seeds of envy and future conflict, with rivals plotting how to carve off their slice of the golden pie? The chronicles leave enough gaps for both tales to creep in. You settle near a fire where a woman fans glowing coals, coaxing flames that dance like eager children. Her pot releases a thick steam scented with cloves, and something richer you can't quite name. She glances up, gives you a slow, knowing smile as if to say you'll never find this recipe again, so you'd better savor the memory. Somewhere nearby, a camel snorts, followed by the lazy slap of its tail against its side. The sound joins the crackle of the fire, the occasional human sigh, and the hush of sand shifting under countless feet. An orchestra tuned perfectly for wandering minds. Dawn tiptoes back, shy after last night's noisy brilliance. You stretch, bones popping in protest, and blink up at a sky, so clear it feels like you could tumble right through it. The caravan is already stirring, tents folding like sleepy flowers, people calling out soft instructions that float across the camp in gentle waves. Major historical fact to pocket alongside your growing sleepiness. After Mansa Musa's death around 1337, Mali continued to thrive for over a century before slowly fracturing under internal disputes and external pressures. Songhai rose in the east, carving its own empire from Mali's richest veins, while European colonizers much later would carve yet again, with considerably less poetry. A trader shuffles past carrying a basket heaped with cola nuts, bright and bitter. Obscure cultural tidbit? Offering cola was more than simple hospitality. It sealed deals, marked reconciliations, and honored guests. Refusing one could be taken as a slight on par with skipping someone's wedding or eating all their dates without asking. Historians still debate just how well Musa's vast wealth actually improved life for the average farmer or fisher in his empire. Was it mostly a glittering show that dazzled foreign eyes, or did gold trickle down into new wells, roads, and safer markets? Evidence whispers both ways, leaving modern scholars to argue over dusty ledgers and half-legible manuscripts. You trail behind a camel that seems unusually chatty today, grumbling under its breath as though listing petty grievances. Maybe about the sand, or possibly the sand. Remember the indigo dyers from Timbuktu? One of them appears ahead now, palms still faintly stained, bargaining over a bolt of cloth so bright it nearly startles the sun. A breeze passes through, carrying distant laughter, the mellow ring of a copper bowl being washed, and a few bars of that wandering ivory flute. You close your eyes, and for one long, slow moment, you're simply another soul adrift in this golden world, rich not just in coins, but in countless small, precious noises. The sun leans low again, pooling its last warmth across the sand like honey spilled from a careless hand. The caravan has found its evening rhythm. Fires spark alive in little rings. Voices weave through one another in easy, familiar patterns, and somewhere a pot bubbles over with laughter. Someone must have told a story too wild even for this road. Your steps slow. There's no hurry now, not when the world itself seems to exhale in relief at another day survived. You find a spot on a gentle rise where the ground still holds the memory of the sun, and sit. The sky unfurls into a darker, richer blue, pinpricked by stars that blink awake one by one, as though each were summoned by your own tired gaze. Major historical fact for this final leg of the journey. Centuries after Mansa Musa's golden pilgrimage, his legends still outpaced even the grandest European kings in tales of wealth. Early explorers and map makers traded stories of a black African monarch so rich he could buy entire cities. Some believed he discovered mythical rivers of gold, rumors that helped drive desperate voyages, many doomed by greed or storms. A small cluster of women nearby claps out a gentle rhythm, palms meeting in soft slaps that sound like rain on thick leaves. Obscure cultural tidbit: in many Sahelian traditions, such clapping songs were used not just for amusement, but to teach children proverbs, shaping memory through playful repetition. A simple game with wisdom folded deep inside. Historians still debate whether Mali's riches might have grown even larger had colonial powers not later scrambled to strip the land of its veins of gold, leaving scars that still pulse beneath today's markets and highways. But that is a sorrow best left to softer hours. You draw a breath that seems to pull in every spice, every sigh, every drifting song of this long, drowsy road. Remember the child with bells on her ankles? Or the ivory flute that danced in and out of your days like a sly spirit? Their echoes settle quietly around you now. So you lie back, letting the ground hold all of you. The last warmth of the day seeps into your shoulders, your hips, your palms. Above, the night opens wide, stars so bright they blur if you dare stare too long. A small breeze tiptoes across your skin, carrying with it faint trails of wood smoke, crushed mint, and the tender salt of well-traveled bodies. Voices fade into murmurs, then into hushes. Somewhere far off, a camel groans, one last complaint before settling with a heavy sigh. The fires dip low, flames shrinking to patient embers, content to simply glow. Even the caravan seems to draw in on itself, hundreds of souls curling gently inward as dreams start their soft parade. You feel your own breath slow, chest rising in long, lazy arcs. Each exhale floats out into the dark, unhurried, like a leaf set adrift on a still pond. The patterns of the day, woven baskets, jingling bells, laughing children, arguing merchants, fold themselves into a gentle tapestry behind your eyes, threads of gold and indigo and warm sandy brown. Somewhere nearby, maybe just beyond the reach of sight, the ivory flute breathes a final, wandering note. It curls around your ear, lingers at your cheek, then drifts away, carried off by the same tender wind that will rock this whole caravan through the night. So rest here, traveler. Let the weight of centuries slip loose. In this quiet hour, Mali's riches are not just coins or carved mosques, but these countless, delicate moments. The hush of dusk, the press of old stories, the knowing hum of earth beneath your bones. And if sleep comes now, let find you smiling, wrapped in the soft memory of gold dust and desert songs.